and welcome to our live streaming with NetGrew. And I have here Story DeWeese today as our guest, special guest. Super happy to have Story. And before we go any further, I'll just pass the baton to Story to introduce herself and tell us all about her experience, what she's up to, and what's her job like, and what cool projects she's working on. Story.
Sure, thanks. So I'm Story. I'm a technical marketing engineer here at Cisco, and I work on a lot of different projects, but I work primarily on enterprise switching, and specifically within that realm, I work on programmability and automation. So I'm really excited today to talk more about some automation, some tooling, and specifically get into some Terraform use cases. So definitely excited to be here today.
We're super happy to have you, so thank you for coming over. So we were just talking, right? Events. As a TME, you go to events quite a bit. It seems like for whatever reason there's not going to be an impact for you, so like the Cisco sales conference is not happening for you, which it's a shame. But coming up exciting, maybe Melbourne, right? Cisco Lab Melbourne at the end of this calendar year, hopefully.
Yes,
Did you
hopefully
put
I'll
in
be
your
able to go to
sessions?
Melbourne. Yeah, I applied for a few sessions there, so hopefully I'll be able to make it out. Yeah, I love going to Cisco Live and meeting with all the different people. So I've been to Cisco Live in US and the one earlier this year in Amsterdam, and I went to Melbourne last year. So I would love to go back if I get the opportunity to.
Which one? Which one is your favorite?
Ooh, it's a hard question. I feel like I like them all for different reasons. I don't want to pick favorites here, but definitely love the ones that are a little bit further away from home. I love to travel and explore new places. So definitely Melbourne and Amsterdam were highlights for me.
Cool, cool. And then next year we're talking about, I think, for Europe, Amsterdam again. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be interesting to go back there. All right. So then uh, let's talk about what you're working on. You were saying about Terraform. I know you have also a demo for us today. Do you want to go a bit and explain folks that are maybe new to Terraform what it is, the Terraform provider that we have for IOSXE, where they can find it, and then maybe talk about the demo that you're going to show us?
Yeah, definitely. Let's get into it. So I'll go ahead and share on my screen here. And I have just a couple of intro slides that I want to go through. And then we can get into the demo and actually see it working, get to the exciting stuff.
Cool. All right.
So I'll just share out here. Let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So this is just an intro into Terraform. First of all, what is it and how does it work? But really the use case that we'll be talking about today is how to build a secure crypto tunnel using Terraform. And in this case, we'll actually be connecting our Cisco Catalyst iOS XE device directly to the cloud. So let's get into it. This is kind of like an overview of the flow of what we'll cover. So the first part is an intro to Terraform tooling as a whole. And then we'll talk about the secure crypto use case specifically. And afterwards, we'll get into the demo and some resources on how to get started and how to continue on this programmability journey. So first off, starting just with Terraform. So Terraform itself is an open source infrastructure as code cloud native tooling. And let's get started with some terminology here. Like, what are we actually talking about? What are we going to be working with? So first of all, we have an example of an execution plan file here. And essentially what that means is it's a file and it's written in Hashicorp configuration language, or HCL. But really, if you've worked with JSON before, it's pretty much the same formatting here. So you'll notice there's a .tf or Terraform extension. So within our file, we're going to be using a couple of different providers. So in this case, we're going to be using the iOS XE provider, and we'll also be using cloud providers as well. So these providers are all hosted on the Terraform registry, and you're able to access them there. And in this case, we're using the iOS XE Terraform provider here. And then we define for the provider the actual device that we want to go out and configure using this provider. Next, we have a couple of resources here. And the first one is a simple VLAN put, which is the REST operation to put or create a new VLAN. And in this case, we're talking about VLAN 511. So this is the RESTconf payload that we're actually using to create that. And then we do a resource. We have a second resource, which is the VLAN get here. So in this case, we're going to get or retrieve all the VLANs that are currently configured on our device. So I was talking a little bit about REST here because the Terraform provider is built against the REST API. And so that's how we're able to use Terraform to leverage it to actually interface with our XE device. And then we have a little bit more about the evolution of the Terraform provider. Where did we start and where are we at today? So first of all, last year, we came out with an imperative RESTconf provider, and we had support for basically anything that you could do in RESTconf. If you could build a RESTconf payload, you could actually use this Terraform provider to deploy it to your switch, for example. One thing to note about this one is it worked well for creating or editing or even retrieving new, say, configuration on your device. And then in phase 2, we actually moved into some more declarative providers. And this is typically how Terraform is actually used with a Terraform provider, or in our case, we were talking about a few different features and how to use them in a declarative manner. So in August of last year, so I guess just about a year ago, we released the BGP VPN provider. And then later in October, we released the app hosting provider. And again, these are feature specific, and they were providers that were declarative in nature. So both of these providers used the same SDK, which is kind of like the background of how we create a Terraform provider. And in phase 2, we're leveraging this same, it's the Go client, kind of like under the hood of how we actually built the provider here. So from there, we wanted to make it more accessible to actually have a lot more features and not do it just on a feature by feature basis, to have a different provider for each one. So now that's why we've landed here in phase 3, where we have a fully declarative provider. And the major difference between the declarative provider that we have now and the imperative provider that we had initially is the capability for the delete operation. So that's the major difference here. And so that's why these declarative providers in phase 2 or even in phase 3 are really the priority here. And note that the phase 3 provider, this is completely a new provider, separate from phase 1 and phase 2, but you can find it at the same place over on the Terraform registry. And you'll use a different provider, even though it's the same link, based on actually the version of the provider that you're using. So if you use an earlier version, you'll be working with phase 1 or phase 2. And with the more recent one, so I think the most recent is 0.3.3 version of the Terraform provider, that will be using the phase 3 or the fully declarative provider here. So how do we actually work with this provider, or what does it look like? Here's just a quick screenshot of GitHub. So actually how to work with this provider. And in this case, we're actually using a resource for the IPsec crypto profile. And in this case, we have a few different attributes here and then values that we provide. So we can include this along with, say, many other resources. They can all be included in one Terraform file, or they can be separated out into many different Terraform files. So as long as they're in the same folder, anytime we run a Terraform apply, we'll actually be working with all of the files within that folder. So now we can set up the use case here about working with the secure crypto tunnel. So in this case, we're talking about end-to-end encryption for enterprise campus using IPsec. And this is now possible on, say, devices like the 9300X. And how this works is we have a few different ways to go about it. So we could have our large campus and we're connecting, say, to over IPsec tunnel into the cloud. Or we could also be using, working with, say, like a mid-sized campus. In this case, we also have a couple of examples of branches here. And we could also have a colo, for example. So behind each one of these will actually be our users or the people who are connecting to the site cloud. They'll be going through one of these options, whether it's the campus or maybe a branch, to actually reach the internal resources here. And so for this use case, we'll actually be focusing in here on the public cloud. So for this demo today, we'll be using AWS, but this could be done using any of the cloud providers available to you. And Terraform has providers for each one of them, so it's really up to you how you would like to work with Terraform and which clouds you would like to connect to. So now we can get into more details about what we'll actually be creating here and why it's important or how it's relevant. So first, we can take a look from the Net DevOps from the administrator side, who's actually going to be creating this IPsec tunnel. So in this case, from the administrator side, they'll actually be executing the Terraform file or files, which will invoke the Terraform provider and then builds this infrastructure over here. So we have, say, our 9300X Catalyst switch. And from the Terraform side, we'll be building this IPsec tunnel. So from the switch side, we're actually connecting or creating this side of the tunnel. And then from the cloud side as well, we can create the resources for the other side of the tunnel here. So once this tunnel is created, then from our folks over in the branches, they'll actually be able to access these resources that weren't otherwise available to them. So when we create the Terraform or when we invoke the Terraform provider here, we'll actually be doing three things in the cloud. We'll be creating a virtual private cloud, the network, and the customer gateway. And then from the switch or from the device side, we'll be actually creating the config for these 8 items. So the tunnel, the proposal, policy, the keyring, and profile. And then we'll also create the IPsec transform and profile, as well as the tunnel interface. So using one Terraform apply, we can actually create all of these in kind of one go here. So that's really cool to see it all working together. Now from the user's perspective, okay, so we've got our folks over on the various branches here. And they'll be connecting to, say, an XE device, and this can actually scale out to be many different devices if we would like. And each one will have a unique IPsec tunnel to the cloud, where we'll actually be able to access or reach these private internal resources that are only accessible because this IPsec tunnel is here. So this is the use case, and this is what we'll actually be getting into here. And if there are any questions or anything as we're going throughout this, don't hesitate to throw those in the comments here, and we can get to them as we go through. So here's an overview of the topology with our IPsec tunnels. So without them, you see we have no way to actually reach our internal resource here, but once we add them, we're able to go from the branch all the way to reaching this resource here.
Cool. So this is like an example of what we keep hearing, the hybrid cloud, right? You have some infrastructure on-prem, some is in the cloud, whatever public cloud provider you're using. So you're accessing basically from, think of like your enterprise branch, whatever it is, from resources connected to your Catalyst switches, right? You're accessing applications, data stored in the public cloud. This is a really cool use case.
Yeah, I think it's cool. And I'm excited to see how other people are able to use this and to make use of it, or actually to apply it in other situations as well.
And this is really cool with IPsec being supported on Catalyst. When was this? I must have missed it because this is a big deal, right? It was not IPsec tunnels, you were not able to establish them from Catalyst switches, but it seems like you can now. So I'm just curious. Story, yeah. When was this? Do you know this feature enabled?
Yeah, it was when one of the more recent releases, actually. Yeah, so I think around 17.6, 17.7. I'll need to double check on the exact release, but yeah, more recently.
Yeah, because when you told me about VPN tunnels from Catalyst switches, in my mind was like, okay, how is she gonna do this? Right? Because we were talking about it yesterday. Are you gonna have like an application hosted in guest shell or something on the switch, right? Like an open VPN client hosted on the switch, but it looks like you don't need that. You just straight up IPsec configuration from the switch. So it's really cool.
Exactly, yeah. And there are a lot of different ways that we could approach this problem as well. But this is just one use case of how we can leverage Terraform to actually use the IPsec tunnels to create the tunnel and then to reach our internal resources here. Exactly.
Cool. So yeah, are we ready?
I'm ready.
For the
Are you
demo?
ready?
Okay, let's give it a try. Let's see.
Okay, cool. So we can go ahead and get started here. So first we'll start off with our branch user. And so we're over here and we're going to try to access our resource. So the idea is that it's not connected right now. I can do a little refresh over here. So we're seeing that the request is timing out. I'm not able to actually get to this internal resource, at least not yet. And we'll see that as we go in and build up the crypto tunnel and actually connect this through Terraform, we should see that this 100% loss will change into like 100% we're actually receiving the packets. So we can also start off by going to the AWS side as well, because we'll be creating some resources here. So to start off, this is just the initial state before we're actually applying anything in Terraform. We have right now one virtual private cloud, and we're actually going to be using this one here. And we'll be connecting different things, like we're going to create a customer gateway. Let me just do a refresh here. Oh, need to log in again. This is how you know it's a live demo here, right? So we have our virtual private cloud here. We're going to be using this arcade one. And then we have a few different resources that we'll be creating within AWS. And again, although we're showing AWS in this particular use case, it is cloud agnostic, right? You can use Terraform providers for other clouds as well. So we'll be creating our customer gateway here, and we'll also be creating a virtual private gateway, as well as we'll make this site-to-site connection. So this part actually connects our customer gateway to the virtual private gateway that we'll be creating shortly. So that's a kind of a look from the AWS side at the initial state. And now we can go check it out as to currently what we'll be doing or what we'll be working with. So we have an example here, and we're actually going to run through a few different commands to actually trigger Terraform and make it work. So the first one is this Terraform init, and this is a really important one to make sure that you're using the proper versions of all the providers that you want to use. So we see that Terraform has successfully been initialized, so we're good to go here. Next, it's common practice to use a Terraform plan. So in this case, I'm using Terraform plan with a specific flag of using a var file. So I have a few different variables that are defined over here in the AWS TF vars. So we'll be using these, for example, this is the virtual private cloud that we were just looking at over in AWS. We want to actually connect to this one. So we see that from the Terraform plan, we have 11 items that we want to add, and we're going to make 0 changes and 0 destroys or deletes here. So then we can actually look at the details of, okay, these are all the things that we're going to be creating. And again, this is good practice to go through to make sure you know what a Terraform file is going to do before actually applying it. But now that we've checked it out, we know it's all good to go, we can run the Terraform apply. So I'll be running this one here. And in this case, I have the 2 different flags. So the first one is the Terraform variable file, so it's the same one here about I want to use these variables that I've defined previously. And this just makes it easier to change or edit the variables, say later on, if I wanted to use a different virtual private cloud, I could just go in here to the variable file, change it in and out, and everything else will remain the same. Next, I'm using this flag auto approve, and there's kind of some back and forth as to if this is best practice or not, but it's really up to you. Typically, if I had just run a Terraform apply, say this portion of it, then it would ask me, are you sure? Do you really want to apply this? Like, make sure. And that's often when you may want to go back and look at the Terraform plan just to confirm that everything is going to happen as expected. So I'm running this apply here, and it'll take a couple minutes to go through because we are going to configure things over on the device side, as well as configuring them in AWS. And speaking of the device, we can actually log in here. So this is my 9300X. And as we go throughout this process, we're going to create this tunnel 305, which we can see hasn't been created yet. So once the Terraform apply is complete, we should see that these tunnels are actually up and that the crypto is applied. So it is creating the IPsec crypto tunnel that we're actually looking for. So while this Terraform apply continues, we can actually get into what we're doing here. So we are looking from the AWS console side about what we want to create. And what that looks like here is we're going to create the virtual private gateway, and then there are links here if you would like to look at the example later on and see how you can actually use the AWS provider. And here we're going to create a new virtual private gateway. We're also going to go in and attach this to the VPC. So the gateway that we're creating here will attach it. And we're going to enable some route propagation. Then we create our customer gateway. And this one we're going to also connect. So we create the VPN connection between the VPN and the customer gateway here. So you can see we're using these values that we're actually getting from up above in the same Terraform file. So how this works is once we create a resource, say like this one, we're creating the customer gateway, we're going to actually use that customer gateway down here when we create the connection to the VPN. So this is sort of from the AWS side, how we're actually creating these different resources. And once they're created, we can go take a look at the AWS console and see, yes, they have actually been created. Okay, looks like I'm getting an error here. Let's try this one more time. And while that's running, we can go ahead and look at the 9300X config as well. So as a whole, what we're going to do is create the crypto for the first tunnel, and then we create the tunnel itself. And we're going to create the crypto for the second tunnel and then create that tunnel. And then we'll use the static routes that were generated by AWS to actually make this connection complete. So yes, I see with the second run, we got that, yes, the resources were added. So I ran this once, and it must have been the first 9 or so resources over in AWS that were created. And then now we've just got the 2 from the device side. So you'll see the outputs that we have here. These are actually the IPs that AWS is generating for us. And we can check it out here. So first of all, let's just confirm that these tunnels were actually created. So I see the first one is up and the protocol is up. Okay, nice. So let's try the second one. Yes, tunnel 305 is up and the protocol is up. So now let's take a look from the AWS side here. So before there was nothing. Let's do a refresh. We should see the connection. Okay, yes, this August 2023, so that's where we're at. This is actually the connection between the virtual private gateway and the customer gateway, and these two we've also just created here. So the virtual private gateway is this one, the August one that wasn't here before, and this one is attached to our virtual private cloud here. And next we have our customer gateway, which again, this one is new. It's created from Terraform. And that's how we're able to actually create this site-to-site VPN connection here. So now we've shown from the AWS side and from the device side, it looks like everything is right, but let's do the actual test here. This is really going to tell us if it's working or not. Can we access this resource? And now we're able to ping this that we weren't able to before, and we're actually getting a resolve here. So we're able to access this internal resource that before wasn't available to us. So that is ultimately the validation of the demo here. But taking this like a step further too, one thing that we could do and that we would like to see in this particular, as this demo progresses, is to look at the history over time. So maybe if we're tracking, okay, when can we actually ping and get a response back? Like when can we see this works? And if we track this over time, we can create charts and graphs to actually see, okay, as soon as the IPsec tunnel is up and rolling, we're actually seeing success rates here, right? The tunnel is up, and also we're able to reach this internal resource. And likewise, when we're going to say like tear down, delete this IPsec tunnel, I guess I can go back to the slides here. When we delete this or take it away, then what happens, right? And we should see that, first of all, the IPsec tunnel goes down from the charts graphs, and we should also see that we're no longer able to ping this internal resource. So with that, I'll pause here as we're concluding the demo and take any questions if there may be some.
Yes, there's actually one question that came in from Shannon. So, crypto IPsec is all nice and great, but what about MaxSec? Is that supported or is it on the roadmap?
That's a great question. Let's actually take a look together here.
Yeah.
So we can go to, this is the Terraform provider over on GitHub. And so we can explore the different examples here. And so typically what I will do is go into look at, say, a particular resource, or the data sources are essentially the Git in Terraform. So you're asking about MaxSec specifically. So I see a lot of hits for the IPsec use case. I'm not seeing MaxSec yet, but that's a really good question. So we should definitely prioritize that next. So we'll definitely get this out soon. Yeah, it's a good question, Shannon.
Yeah, what's the cadence on the releases, for the provider, for the Terraform provider for iOS XCs? You showed us phase 1, 2, and 3. We're currently at phase 3. So going forward, are we expecting like every 6 months a new release? And we're at what, version 0.3.3? Is there going to be a 0.3.4 or 0.4? Is there, when should we expect the next release of the provider?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, we have our teams are working on this regularly, and you can see this was updated 2 weeks ago. So we're now in this process of having different sprints for updating the Terraform provider. So it should come out in a few weeks here. So if I put in this request for MaxSec, we should see this coming soon.
Cool. All right. So yeah, there you go, Shannon. It's coming. All right. So then the other thing was that Terraform used to be open source, like you said, but I don't know if you've seen, it was like a couple of weeks ago, they announced that they're actually about to close source it.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize this. Thanks for letting me know.
So Hashicorp, it was a big thing. I mean, a big thing in the infrastructure as code world, DevOps world, right? It's like, because they were thinking about close sourcing it. I mean, they announced that they're going to close source it basically on August 10th. So like, less than 2 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen with it, because one of the, points of attraction for Terraform was, it's open source. You can modify it as you see fit, add your own customizations to the product. But now, with them closing it, it's going to be interesting to see how Terraform is going to grow from here.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the implications of this change and what will be as the closed source. Yeah.
Okay, so there's another question actually from Alan. I'm curious that the edge device is the switch on this case 9300. Does it mean that the 8000 devices are going 100% cloud sets in the future? So the Cat 8K, are they going to be 100% cloud in the future?
Cat 8K, will they be 100% cloud in the future? So let's see, you're talking about the routers here, the virtual routers, is this right?
The edge device is the switch in this case, yes. Oh, so hold on. There's also, this is bring us to the next point, which is you can manage your Catalyst switches through the Meraki dashboard, right? So that's like your cloud managed model that has been working with Meraki for many, many years. Now you can actually add your Catalyst switches and have them monitored, configured from the Meraki dashboard. So is that going to be the only way in the future? I mean, I don't know. Do you know, Story, if that's the only way? That's a loaded question right there.
Yeah, this is a good question. I would be surprised if this was the only way to manage them in the future. See, right now we have like, okay, you can use CLI, you can choose to use Meraki devices if you would like. You can also manage your devices using the various APIs that we have. So we're talking about essentially RESTconf here today, and our Terraform provider is built against the RESTconf API. We can also use netconf, and we're seeing lots of trends as well with the Google protocol, so GNMI, or for telemetry, gRPC. And so there are lots of different ways to interface with, also web UI too, to interface with your device and to actually make changes or get telemetry data, for example, from those devices. So I would be surprised if it was only cloud in the future, but definitely we want to make this an option for you, right? Like one of the many options. So Cisco, we always like to provide you as many different ways to solve a problem as you would like.
Exactly, and that's the point here, Alan. I think options, right? So, like Story was saying, you can manage these devices individually. You can have them managed by what used to be called DNA Center. Catalyst Center has been rebranded, right? So you can have them managed with the central controller. You can have them managed through the Meraki dashboard now, right? So there's all these options. It's really the one that you prefer. We're just giving you different ways of connecting to these devices and managing them. So it's all about options. So I don't think there's going to be only one going forward in the future, right? It's like only one way of monitoring or managing these devices. I don't think that's the way of the future. But I mean, that's way above my pay grade. I can
Yeah,
only
who knows? We'll see.
I can only suspect and see from the history, right? The thing is, we're just trying to give people different options in all these cases. But good question. All right. So sorry, Story. You were saying we were talking about release cycle. So it's coming up, right? MaxSec hopefully will be supported in the next one. It seems like the provider is used by the community. Like, is there interest? It seems like there is, right? Do we know how many for this repo? Do we have pull requests on it? Do we have downloads?
Yeah, so we can take a look here at, this is like the Terraform registry view.
Mm-hmm.
Before we were looking over on the GitHub side. So you can see that, yeah, the most recent version is 0.3.3. It was published 22 days ago. And you can see there's, already over 100 downloads this week, for example. But if we're looking at all time, there's 20,000 here. So quite a lot of use already, even though, our phase 3 is pretty relatively new here. We just released it, I guess it was last month. So a lot of people are actually using this Terraform provider, and we've seen quite an increase of use as we went into this phase 3. Yeah, so lots of people are using it, and if there are additional requests, later on after this session today, you can definitely open up requests for what the new solutions will be, right? Or if you want a certain use case examples of how to use a specific use case that you have in mind, let us know, and we'll be happy to prioritize those. That's what we're here for.
So how would people do that? Would they just open an issue in GitHub, or would they do it like what
Yeah.
would be the way for people to actually request?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Features?
So there are a few ways that you can go about it. So you can see there are open issues. You can create your own issue here, and we'll be tracking these. Another way is to reach out to me or the teams directly, and we'll be able to get these requests in for you as well. So basically, the goal is to be really driven by anyone who's using this Terraform provider, to actually make it, the most useful that it can be, and to provide those necessary examples. So if there is a problem with it, or any issues, or something that you want to see in the future, definitely let us know. And however that's easiest for you, we'll make sure to make it happen.
Cool. Where can people find you, by the way, if they have any requests?
Yeah, great question. Great question. Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. If we're not connected, feel free to connect with me there. You can also find me over email, or if you have WebEx, definitely reach out to me there. Always happy to chat about Terraform and programmability, or anything that may be on your mind.
Cool. So talking about GitHub, do you have the demo that you showed us today? Do you have it hosted somewhere if people want to download the Terraform plan for the VPN connection with AWS? Did you share it somewhere, or can people find it on GitHub or somewhere?
Good question. Good question. Yes. Let me just pull up the link here, and I should be able to share it in the chat.
Yep, that'd be great. Cool.
Stop the share here for a moment. Yep, and I'll just post it in the chat here shortly.
All right. What else we have for folks? What about Ansible? Let's talk about, see if there's any Ansible collection about iOS XE that it's being developed. Because there is the generic one, right? The iOS one that kind of works with iOS XE, but there you go. Let me actually see.
Yeah, good question about Ansible. So for this particular use case, we're talking about IPsec. And so this is actually coming as a solution from the Ansible side as well. So today we're talking all about Terraform tooling, and we will be providing or publishing soon an Ansible playbook or solution that does essentially the same or very similar. It's another option for actually creating an IPsec tunnel and going throughout this workflow. So this is something we're actively working on internally right now. So this will be available soon to you.
Cool. Looks like Lizzie wants to say hi over there.
Yes. Yeah, Lizzie is my dog here. Yeah, she's a programmability pup, so she's happy to to chat about programmability things as well. Yeah, this is Lizzie.
So cute. Muhammad joined late but rewards rest later. Thank you for doing these sessions. Really helpful for people. Oh, Muhammad, thanks for joining. Yeah, and yes, we record these sessions. There'll be more coming up, so be on the lookout for that. So Ansible coming up, great. We have the Terraform provider that's getting updated, on a regular basis with new features. Hopefully MaxSec will be there too soon for Shannon. What else? Let's talk about what we're doing, because I had Story as a guest because we're working closely. I'm the iOS XE developer advocate, between other things, on the developer relations team. So we're closely working, and there's some changes that are coming up we're actually consolidating and updating the sandboxes. So if you've been using the DevNet/developer relations sandboxes on iOS XE, right? There used to be 6 of them, including the zero-touch provisioning one, including the model-driven programmability one, right? And there was a stable version of iOS XE that we were running, and then kind of like the latest version of iOS XE. So all of these are getting consolidated into just a couple of sandboxes, right? So ZTP will get merged, model-driven programmability will get merged in the same sandbox, and we're making this because we want it to be, easier, cleaner. You don't have a lot of sandboxes that you need to keep track of. So those are coming up. We're working on updating those, and once we have those, then you'll see also the learning labs getting, a refresh. We want to make sure that they work with these new sandboxes. And the other thing is that we're moving from the CSR 1000V, that used to be our classic, right, iOS XE sandbox. We're moving to Catalyst 8000V. So that's another big change for these sandboxes. Anything you want to say about the sandboxes, Story?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to these. So as we're talking about Terraform today, yeah, we're planning to create a new Terraform sandbox, or have it available to you, so you can actually use this from the sandboxes themselves. You don't necessarily need to go in and install Terraform yourself or on your own device, but you can actually use these sandboxes. You can use the learning labs to understand how to work with Terraform or these other tools, and get some hands-on access. So I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Cool. So yes, Terraform Learning Lab coming up with Learning Labs 2.0 format, right? If you folks are not aware, we have version 2.0 of the Learning Labs, and that brings you an IDE, that brings you a Docker container within your web page, and that gives us the option of running, tools like Terraform, like Ansible within the browser itself, within that Docker container. So you don't need to install anything on your local machine. It's all running in a virtual environment in our backend. So you can start running your Terraform plans and your Terraform changes right out of the box without having to install anything on your side. What else we have? Then we have a refresh of the Dev Center, right? So that's coming up. Story, Jeremy, myself, Adrian Moharek, the rest of the team here are working on updating and refreshing the Dev Center. So that means that it's going to be easier for you to find these types of resources that we're showing you today, right? So we'll have links to video recordings from previous sessions at Cisco Live that are on iOS XE programmability. We're going to have links to learning tracks and learning labs, right, that are specifically for iOS XE, for Catalyst. Both older version and newer ones, 2.0, right, that are all hands-on. We'll have links to the new sandboxes in there. We'll have links to documentation, REST API, RESTconf, NetConf as interfaces, right? So we'll have that also as part of the Dev Center. So I'm really excited about this. The refresh, it's a big refresh. It's being needed and necessary, right, for iOS XE for a bit of time, but I'm happy to tell you that we're working on it, and I think you're gonna love it. Once it's gonna come out, it's gonna be a really big improvement. So excited about that one too. And then also I wanted to talk story with you about the white paper, the programmability white paper that you, Jeremy, and the team have put together. I don't know if you want to share the screen back and show folks what we're talking about, but I think that's a really important resource. Let's bring it back. There we go.
Yeah, awesome. So we actually had a webinar a little while back, kind of explaining the white paper and actually getting into the details of, okay, how do we go through and actually use programmability as a whole? And so in that webinar where we're talking about the white paper, and we should be able to link it here, the webinar itself, you can see it's included here at this link over on YouTube. But here we went through the white paper as to what it includes. So this one is all focused on programmability and automation. So it goes from day 0, which is the device onboarding side of things, and then goes into the day 1 where we're doing device configuration. And that's where we are really focused on with Terraform. So Terraform is sitting here in this day 1. So next we have day 2 where we talk about model-driven telemetry. I know I've touched on this a little bit throughout today's session, but essentially this is how do we look at telemetry data from our device over time, and how do we make decisions based on that data? So say, for example, you're curious to look at the CPU and memory utilization over time and understand, when's it really high or when maybe you need to make sure to bring it down a little bit. That can all be done using device telemetry in the day 2 operations. And then we get into day N, which is our device optimization. So this is really where we're working with different toolings. So we mentioned like the Google protocols before. There's the GNOI cert.proto, rest.proto, or reset.proto. So for example, we describe how to use all of these in the white paper itself. So you can use the QR codes here or the links themselves to take you to the white paper itself. And this is available over on Cisco.com. So this is the white paper itself, along with the live demos and webinar that went along with it more recently.
Nice. I also put the link to the webinar, to the Bright Talk link in here in the chat so folks can find it. All right. So what else? We covered a lot of content today. What else? Did we forget anything, Story?
Yeah, I guess I just want to wrap up with a couple more resources on Terraform and how to continue learning about it or working with it. So let's see here. I should have a slide. Okay, this is about the more recent Terraform specific blogs and YouTube videos that we have so far. We also have a WebEx space, so anyone is free to join this space and ask questions or engage with the teams here. So this is yet another avenue for you to make feature requests. If you have them in the future, you can join this space and then chat with us there directly. But one thing I want to highlight here is we have a couple of videos so far, but we're actually in the process of making additional videos. So we'll have another Terraform video coming out soon, and it will cover similar topics to what we have discussed today, specifically focused on the phase 3 and the crypto IPsec use case. So usually these are about 7 to 10 minutes, just an intro to Terraform and describing a use case, going over a demo. And so be on the lookout for that, more videos to come, and we'll also have blogs coming soon about the most recent Terraform provider updates. And then from an overall perspective, if you're curious, where else can you use infrastructure as code or Terraform? Here's a list that we have of all of the Cisco product lines that are actually supporting or working with Terraform providers today. So in our discussion, we were really focused in on this iOS XE, right, for Cisco, but there are tons of other providers out there for you as well to actually use and leverage and work with other platforms within Cisco. So be sure to check these out if you are using these platforms, and you can use Terraform as the one tooling to actually configure or manage all of these devices and solutions.
Cool. So there's a couple of comments. Yeah, that's really good point with infrastructure as code and what other Cisco products support this. So there's, yes, Terraform providers for DNA Center, for ASA, for DNA Center, Catalyst Center, what's coming up, right? SD-WAN, based on the Virtual acquisition, SD-WAN. So lots and lots of Terraform providers, Ansible collections, and then SDKs. And SDKs are very dear and close to my heart for all these products. So we have a Sastry SDK coming up for SD-WAN. right, that I'm super excited about. We have the Meraki SDK for a long time, Python. We're talking about the Python SDK uh, for DNA Center, Catalyst Center. We have also the Python SDK, and hopefully we'll get maybe an SDK for OSXC, maybe, but that's to be decided. Um, so yes, a couple of comments here. I see George Bamfo. I think day one can also go other ways using AI. George, I'm not sure what you mean by that exactly. Just using AI to kind of generate configuration for your day one. Is that what we're talking about? Just asking like a chat GPT type of solution. Hey, generate my configuration for a cat 9K, with this username, with these IPs, with these features enabled, and basically ChatGPT will generate that, or whatever generative AI tool we're talking about will basically generate the config automatically for you. Is that what? Or using NLP? Right, natural language processing. Yes. So yes, the future is gonna be interesting.
Interesting for sure. Yeah. So when we're talking about day zero operations or device onboarding in this case, or in the context of the white paper specifically, we're talking about, say, for example, iPXE or ZTP, the zero touch provisioning protocol. And even more recently, in one of the latest releases, we have allowed secure ZTP as well. So that's something that we'll be talking about, more and more as we get into things. And of course, this is all from Catalyst side. So I guess I'm not really addressing what you're saying here with AI, but from the XE side, these are our options or capabilities. Yeah.
And talking about AI, George, in 2 weeks, actually, I'll have a stream with John Capobianco. He's also a developer advocate at Cisco here. And we're going to cover AI, specifically exactly what you've talked about, right? Using a tool like ChatGPT to start generating your configs, making it agnostic. Can anyone contribute to the white paper story? Is the question from George.
This is a good question. Yeah, definitely reach out to me. I see you're joining via LinkedIn, so we can connect there. This white paper in particular is hosted on Cisco.com, so it's officially like published by Cisco. It's not an open source doc. I wouldn't describe it in that way. But yeah, we can definitely get in contact about additional things that we can create, content that we can create together, or maybe even blogs or things like that in the future. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in talking more about this.
Cool. And then there's one more thing from Dog Barker. Joined late. Was talked about, but will there be anything covering GNMIC? So I mean, I would definitely suggest Doug check the white paper that Story has right here. Right for that, there's a GNMI section in there specifically. Is there anything anywhere else Story that folks can find content covering GNMIC?
That's a good question. Yeah, so definitely check out this telemetry section of the white paper here. We're also in the works of creating a white paper that's focused just on day two, so just the telemetry side of things. So be on the lookout for that in the future as well, where we will go into a very deep dive of GNMI as a whole, including the different toolings around that. So including GNMIC as one of those options.
Cool. So Doug, coming up. In the meantime, check the white paper. There's some really great content in there. And I mean, I know GNMI is a big topic, right? Telemetry story, and seems to be adopted by quite a lot of customers, right? They want the telemetry, they want gRPC, they want GNMI. So there's definitely got to be more content coming about these topics for sure. All right. Any other questions coming up? This has been great. I see at the end there's CLI to XML. Is there any plans to support CLI to JSON? Craig Punt is asking Story. I don't know if we have an answer for him. CLI to XML is supported. What about plans to support CLI to JSON?
Yeah, so this is a good question. For this option, we have how you can actually like format the output. So you have both available to you if you would like. So you can do, say, for example, like a show run pipe format RESTconf JSON or netconf XML. So it's up to you. Both of these are available in, I believe, 17.7 release. I can double check on that. But yeah, these are both available to you.
Yeah, correct. So that's out of the box, right? You just do a pipe format, whatever format you want for your command.
Yep, exactly.
Or you could also use a tool like PyTS that's kind of, will run all these commands for you and get the output and organizing in JSON format. So you could have, and that's kind of operating system agnostic, third-party devices supported. I'm a fan of PyTS, right? So that's what I'm saying. If you want to have a look at it, you run your commands on Cisco, iOS XE, and XOS, ASA, whatever it is. The output, PyTS will format it for you automatically in JSON, so you kind of get a consistent output for all these commands. All right, then Ricardo Diaz Sanchez asking, in Networking Academy, is there a way to get an image of iOS XE to practice? So if you're associated with the Networking Academy, Ricardo, then I would ask your instructor, first of all. There's, of course, the Cat 8KV. You can download it from software.cisco.com. So if you're entitled to download software from software.cisco.com, then yes, you can go ahead and download, your Cat 8KV virtual switch and install it in a hypervisor, whatever you want. You can run it with Vagrant. You can install it on ESXi, on VirtualBox, whatever it is, and you can practice that way too. But especially, like I said, if you're associated with the NetAcad location, ask for instructor for sure, and they'll be able to help you more on that side. All right, so bunch of questions. I really like the engagement that we've had today here, and Story, you've been amazing. Thanks again for coming over, showing us the demo. Really cool. Folks can find it on GitHub, download it. We showed them lots of content, so I'm really happy how it went today. Any other questions before we wrap it up for today, folks? And I think we answered all of them. I don't think I missed any.
Awesome, that's great. Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor to be on this.
Yes. Today. So looking forward to having you again, right? So if you have anything else you want to share, maybe on GNMI, maybe something when we have, or maybe the Terraform Learning Labs when they're coming out, we'll bring you back and we'll show folks where they can find some more GNMI content, the Learning Labs, how it works. So we'd love to have you again.
Yeah, definitely. Would love to come back and chat more.
All right. Okay. So then we'll wrap it up here. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. And like I said, see you in 2 weeks. Next week, I'll be in Vegas for Cisco Impact. So we're not going to have this session, but 2 weeks from now, 9 a.m. Pacific, same channels, LinkedIn, YouTube, on Wednesday again, right? September 6th. We'll have John Capobianco, like I said, and he'll bring generative AI, ChatGPT, what the work he's been doing. So he'll have a demo for us too, showing us how to use NLP to kind of generate your configuration automatically, build your bots. So it's going to be a cool session. Looking forward to it. Story, thanks again. And thanks everyone for joining us, and see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks. See you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.